In this video, what I want to show you is that it's possible to feel good even while life is hard. And that if we can do this, it actually makes us better prepared to improve our lives and the lives of other people. I'm going to show you at the end my top 5 science-backed ways of doing this. So I personally am very connected to this topic. I care about it a lot because I had to learn all this stuff myself. In my late 30s, I developed a terribly painful chronic nerve condition. Started in my arm, spread throughout my body. It was very, very painful. The medical world basically said, we can't help you. This is going to just get worse. We can't make it go away. So I was forced to figure out, what do I do now? If I cannot make the pain go away, how can I feel good and live a good life anyway? So let's get into the science on this. Let me ask you a question. How much of your time do you spend thinking about the problems in your life and in the world and potential future problems? If it's a lot, then let me tell you, you are normal and it's not your fault. Basically, you're built this way. We as humans have an innate negativity bias. This means that we pay extra attention to negative information and we are extra affected by negative information. So this negativity bias comes out, for example, imagine you get a lot of positive feedback and you get one piece of criticism. You're probably going to spend a lot more energy thinking about the criticism. Not your fault, again, that's how we're built. The idea is our early human ancestors benefited from having a negativity bias. They were able to focus on and identify potential problems in order to survive. So that trait kind of got passed along. This is great because now we exist. Otherwise, maybe we wouldn't. However, there are some serious downsides to this negativity bias. The most important of these being, we feel really bad when we spend all our time focused on the negative. There's a serious cost to that. For depression, one of the major drivers of depression is overthinking about what the problems are in your life and how you got here and what went wrong in the past. And one of the major drivers for anxiety is overthinking about all the things that could possibly go wrong and what I could do to prevent them. In psychology, we call that rumination and worry. And in fact, treatments for depression and anxiety can sometimes just focus on cutting down the overthinking. So we're not just powerless in this whole process. Sure, we have a bias. But the good news is, we can actually do things to correct our bias. So the way I like to think about this is, if you pull back and you think about it, you are actually in charge of training your brain. So think about it maybe like an AI, right? If you have an AI and you are training it by giving it tons and tons of negative information, you're just feeding in negative stories and negative history and negative predictions of the future, it's going to take all that information and it's going to form its model of how the world works. Our brains are pattern recognition and prediction machines. So if we are feeding our brains all of this negative information all the time, it's going to do what it thinks it's supposed to do. It's going to look for negative information everywhere. And when we ask it for a prediction of the future, it's going to give us a negative prediction. That's our brain doing what it's supposed to do. What if we step back and we trained our brain differently? What if instead of overly focusing on all this negative information, what if instead we started to train our brain with positive information? What the science tells us is, 1, that's going to help, and 2, we can actually thrive if we do this. So in the psych research, there is this idea that for humans to thrive, to flourish, live our best lives, we need 3 times as many positive inputs as we do negative, 3 times as much positive emotion as negative emotion. And this is called the Losada ratio, based on the person that came up with this. The mathematical numbers of the ratio are debatable, but all the research coalesces to say, as humans, we need significantly more positive input than we do negative in order to counteract that negativity bias. So the reason kind of things work this way is, even though negative emotions, that negativity bias, help us survive, positive emotions also help us survive. There are benefits to having positive emotions. We become more creative, we become more resilient, We're able to come up with novel solutions. We are better able to connect with people. So when I first came across this 3-to-1 low-side ratio, I was struggling with this progressive nerve pain. I was like, how can this apply to me and my situation? I had met with a medical person who had told me basically, hey, you're gonna have to give up on your physical body and instead focus on a life of the mind. I'm like, hey, I'm already a psychologist. I'm already focused on the life of the mind. So that, weirdly enough, actually kind of turned a light bulb on for me. And I thought, I can use my brain to solve this. Maybe I can't get rid of the physical problems I have, but I can basically tune up my brain the best way I can. I was skeptical. How can I apply this 3-to-1 low-SADA ratio in my position? There is so much negative in my life. I've lost so much. I'm suffering so much. As I dug into the research though, it started to make some sense. What I discovered is that the difference between people who thrive and flourish and those who don't isn't that the happy people don't have negatives. In fact, the people in both groups seem to have the same amount of negative emotion. The difference was the positive emotion. The difference was that those people thriving had way more positive experiences, way more positive time. And what I discovered was, if I started to look for it, I could find positives. I could find a lot of positives. Previously, I realized there was serious struggles, serious problems in my life, but I was really shining the flashlight of my attention really closely on those problems so that it was filling up kind of my whole day. But when I pulled back and I looked more broadly, I found that I had a lot of kind people in my life, a lot of things I still enjoyed, a lot of things I could still do. And I started to put into action a lot of the things that I will tell you about as we get further along. But I want to bring this up because I know some of you might be thinking there are no positives. I can tell you from my experience, once we look for positive, we find them. Remember what I told you about training that AI? If we can train our brain to look for and appreciate positives, it starts to learn how to do it. So we can pick it up and it becomes easier over time. I had one other major concern with this idea. Yes, I was focusing on the negative a lot, but I was doing it for a reason, right? I was doing it because, one, sure, it grabbed my attention because it was so painful, but also I was trying to find a solution. Like I was trying to find the answer to this. I needed to focus my attention on it if I was going to make progress. Or at least that's what I thought. Once I dug into the research, what I've found is that that's actually not very accurate. So part of this is because the more we focus on negativity and problems, the worse and worse we feel. And the more likely we are to have our mood drop. The lower our mood is, the harder it is to achieve things. The research finds that when we feel a ton of negative emotion, we're not particularly effective at solving problems. On the other side though, if we can generate a better and more positive mental state, then that makes us more creative. We can come up with new solutions, we find new information, we are more resilient when things are difficult, and we're more persistent. And what this adds up to is a higher likelihood of solving our problems, improving our problems. That said, we're not going to just ignore all the negatives, right? And just focus on positives. We're not going to stick our heads in the sand and pretend problems don't exist. What we're looking for, like very much everything else in life, is we're looking for some kind of balance. We do want to engage with the negative parts, the negative information, but we want to do it in the balance of having a lot of positive. Yes, we do need to face the problems and negative things in our lives, but a lot of people do this in unhelpful ways. Just by idly thinking and passively taking in negative information. So when we do face a negative, we want to do it in a very controlled way and in a way that's meant to solve problems. Let's get into what you can actually do to achieve this low SATA ratio and improve your life. If you forget everything else, remember this. Let's decrease the negative inputs and let's increase the positive inputs. And ask yourself that each day. Am I lowering my negative inputs? Am I increasing my positive inputs? In the category of decreasing the negative experience of negative inputs, the first thing is step back and identify all the sources of negativity in your life and see what is it possible to do to limit those. So maybe it's certain communities or people, maybe it's certain types of social media, maybe it's the news. I've had people who've made drastic improvements just from deleting their Twitter and news apps. And I personally have not consumed the news since 2016 with fantastic results. Next, don't passively, idly think about the negatives and problems in the life and the world. Instead, schedule when you're going to face those problems. Put off thinking about it until then. And when you do face it, try to come up with potential solutions and then put those into action. This is known as active problem solving. Next, this is really useful at helping you develop the skill of noticing when you've gone off into negative processing and being able to redirect your attention back where you want it. Practice meditation. Next, when negative things do happen, look for what are the potential benefits of this thing that you have judged to be negative. Will you learn a lesson from this? Is this a wake-up call? Is it pushing you in a certain direction? Is it going to help you connect to people in some way? Will it create more empathy? Try something from cognitive therapy called benefit finding. Now, for increasing positive things, let me pull my favorite ideas from science. These things that are shown to increase our positive emotion and positive experience. Spend more time doing things that you care about, that you find meaningful, that you enjoy, and spend more time with positive people and communities. Next, engage in activities that science has found helps us to kind of train our brain to be positive. This includes looking for, savoring, and appreciating simple pleasures. Those small everyday things that we kind of don't pay attention to. Also, writing down or expressing gratitude or the positive things that you can identify in your life. And another thing that I like to do is negativity shrinks our visual field and positivity widens it. So when I notice myself walking around and I start to overthink about negatives, I force myself to look up, look around, notice and appreciate the beauty that's there in nature, in architecture, in the sky, on the ground. It's everywhere if you look for it. And finally, engage in the activities that science has found bulk up our positive emotions. Things like random acts of kindness, brief social interactions with strangers and acquaintances, giving compliments to people, and exercising. And last thing, I'll give you a quick update, because some of you might be wondering, well, how am I doing with this horrible, debilitating nerve disease? Well, I'll tell you quickly that I put all these things into action diligently. It's hard work. I had to constantly choose to refocus on the positive and bring more and more positive, refocus away from the negative. And I'm happy to report I am against the medical predictions and against all odds. I have had great improvements. I do want to say though too that I really appreciate being where I am today. I really thought in some ways my life was over. The reason I started this channel and I wrote my book was because I wanted to share all the things that I had learned and had improved my life while I still had the chance. I'm happy to report that I'm doing much, much better now. And I look forward to continuing to do this thing that matters so much to me. So I hope that helps.